Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to join. Thank you so much for being here. Wonderful to see all the different geographical locations represented today. Thank you all so much. And we'll just give it another minute or two just to get started. Poland, wow. Colorado, Michigan, Oregon, San Diego, awesome. So just wanted to also let you know that this slide here, in addition to being super cute, is our official Coyote Awareness Week slide. And for those of you who aren't so inclined, there is a QR code there that you can scan with your phones. And please take our Coyote Pledge, which is one of the things we love people to do during Coyote Awareness Week. And you can download a toolkit and other information. Okay, we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we'll officially dive right in. Hi, everyone. My name's Nadia Steinzer. I am the Carnivore Conservation Director with Project Coyote, and I'm coming to you from New York State. Lovely to see everyone on. What a great turnout, and from all over the country and the world here to talk about coyotes. So if you're just joining us, if you feel like it, you can scan the QR code here next to these adorable faces and go to our Coyote Pledge and download our toolkit and find other resources here to participate in Coyote Awareness Week. So we're going to get started here. Thank you again for joining us. This is Project Coyote's third annual Coyote Awareness Week. And we started these a few years ago to engage the public in greater awareness and appreciation of coyotes, which are really a truly iconic, ecologically vital, and inspiring animal. And through sheer resiliency and adaptability, coyotes have managed to survive centuries of persecution and misunderstanding. And because these problems tragically continue today and show up in our wildlife management policies and the way coyotes are treated wherever they roam, they really represent what needs to change in both public policy and attitudes towards the natural world. And here at Project Coyote and many other people also believe that if we can do that, we can achieve a more ethical and wilder world. So for this year's Coyote Awareness Week webinar, we're going to be focusing on just the beauty and amazement of coyotes and really boost their appreciation as this picture here does. And we're going to focus in on the daily lives and behavior of coyotes. And our guides to do that are two Project Coyote staff members who also happen to be accomplished wildlife photographers and observers. And we have the goal here today of opening your eyes and all of our eyes to, and even our hearts to these amazing creatures. So our team today is myself. I just introduced myself here with Project Coyote. I'm on the left. And then we have these two great photographers. Karin Saucedo is the Texas State Coordinator at Project Coyote. She has a background in advertising and photography and is passionate about using her images to give wildlife a voice. For over a decade, Karin has been involved in animal rescue, studying animal behavior through camera traps, rehabilitation, education, and advocacy. And her images go a long way toward demonstrating just how possible it is to coexist with our wild canid and felid friends. And Mark Surls is the Colorado State Coordinator at Project Coyote. He's had a diverse career ranging from trading stocks to wildlife education and advocacy. And he has learned and truly believes that art is one of the most effective ways to inspire compassion for our wild neighbors. And through wildlife photography and other media, he aims to shine a compassionate light on coyotes and other animals. And with that, I'm going to pass it over, the presentation over to Karin to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. All right, sorry, I need to change the view really quick. Apologies. All
There we
right.
go. Awesome.
Let me try one more time. I need to optimize this sound. Make sure I have a lot of videos in here. So I want to make sure that we are going to hear them, that you're going to hear them. All right, how's that? All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I'm Karin Saucedo. I'm the Texas State Coordinator for Project Coyote, and I'm so excited you're here. This photo was captured on my lunch break in June of 2024. I was juggling a lot at the time. I still had my corporate career, but it was also the month that I started my journey with Project Coyote, so it's especially meaningful to me. And today I want to tell you a few stories about a coyote family that's close to my home that I've followed over the years, what they've taught me, and why I continue to speak out for them. For years, I've dedicated my time, energy, and resources to wild carnivores, balancing it alongside my corporate career, which helped me fund that work. But in 2024, after 30 years, I stepped away to focus 100% on advocacy. And it was the coyote, this often misunderstood animal, that led my husband and I to create our own local nonprofit called Song Dog Watch, where we focus on advocating for and rescuing individual animals in our community. So these stories are about coyotes, but it's also about their shrinking habitat. I'll be showing lots of photos, but probably just as many videos from remote camera footage. As Texas master naturalist, my husband and I volunteered at a place down the road from us called the Connemara Meadow Nature Preserve. It's a 72-acre piece of land in a floodplain, and they're focused on native plant restoration. We've made a lot of great friends here, and we've also been able to enjoy some really incredible wildlife sightings. So just to give you a sense of place, this is the meadow when it's in full bloom with the Texas wildflowers in the spring. Spring is so pretty here. There's a riparian area. The meadow is adjacent to a key tributary that eventually feeds into one of the major lakes here in North Texas. And summer is incredible as well. There's an ongoing bobwhite quail restoration project at the Connemara, so it's always fun to hear their calls. Fall in the meadow is really special too. This is where I got my first camera trap image of a bobcat. And winter, we have a number of migrating bird species that come through this area. But this is the individual who started my journey with photographing coyotes back in the spring of 2017. We heard about a coyote who had mange, and we finally were able to confirm that she was still out there, still alive, and we wanted to help her. We weren't sure if she was a male or female, so we just called her Alex. So we found a homeowner who knew about the coyotes, and he said that they came to a rock at his house every single night. So we set up cameras and we began observing, and at dusk and about 150 feet away, parked next to the house using our car as a blind. We had the windows rolled down so we could hear the coyotes. There were lots of mosquitoes at the time, so we had lots of bug repellent. But once we started getting footage from the cameras, we realized that Alex wasn't the only coyote out there with mange. There were actually four. This is Alex, and we discovered that she's a female and she has a family. I finally saw Alex while I was out there and could get good detailed photos of her. It was clear that she was a mom. And one day we saw another coyote while we were out there. She looked different. She had huge ears and she looked like a yearling who also had mange. We named her Chloe, and this is the day she got treated for mange. And here's a powerful before and after. The left photo is from the day that Chloe got treated, and the right photo is how she looked in October. So mange can be treated, and it doesn't always have to be fatal. This is Chloe again in the meadow. She looked so pretty. She looked great, actually. She and her family would scatter throughout the meadow to hunt for rodents. We photographed the family from our truck using it as a blind. The minute they saw any human on foot, they would take off. And this is Rocky in the switchgrass, Alex's mate. And I had to include this awesome photo my husband took of Chloe. Then finally we saw Alex in the meadow, and she got treated for the mange that day. A month and a half later, we saw her again, and she looked very different. Her skin had healed. You see, it's darker now instead of red and inflamed. She looked more focused. And more importantly, she was searching, she wasn't scratching anymore. She wasn't suffering anymore. And this is the last time we saw Alex here. And around the same time, we saw some stranger coyotes on our cameras. This is courting behavior. It's December 2017, end of December 2017. And one day we were working in the meadow and we saw that beautiful couple. They weren't as comfortable with human activity as the other family was, and we knew this was a very good thing. This is Boris, and we named his mate Natasha. This is one of the two times I'd ever seen Boris and Natasha in person, and that's when we started to invest in more trail cameras. And here's a great look at both Boris and Natasha as they patrol their territory. Notice how beautiful and healthy their coats are. Boris actually had a little bit of fur missing on his back, but that eventually grew back. And he had an injury at this time on his back left leg, which is actually it happens a lot this time of year as coyotes protect their homes. This was again the end of December. You can see their offspring is following them. So a friend told us about a coyote pup when she was on a walk in the meadow who had flies all over him. We found him, but unfortunately it was too late. He passed away, and we buried him in the meadow. So we used our cameras to monitor the area to see if there were any other pups. And this is one of three from that season. We had to be very strategic about when we went to check our cameras so we didn't disturb or put any pressure on Natasha and the pups. Within a few weeks of giving birth and just a few yards from the den, the area was clear cut. This became the new landscape the pups had to navigate. The trees they cut down were turned into mulch, and they began clearing the area to build roads and houses. This is a catch pond to collect the rainwater for the future neighborhood. So here's an overhead view of the area. The yellow dot is the house with the rock where we first saw them. This is the area that the pack had when we first started observing them. This is what it looks like today. This is happening all over here in North Texas, I'm sure all over America. And this is what coyotes are dealing with. So now the pack is reduced to this much smaller area, which means that the human neighbors will definitely be seeing them as they try to eke out a living in this reduced habitat. And here's an example of how people and coyotes live next to each other and we don't even realize they're there. So listen closely in the beginning. You can, I'm not sure if you could hear that, but that was Natasha calling in the beginning for Boris, and he answers back. Here she is again calling. And you can see she's lost her vision in one of her eyes. I'm sorry. They were an affectionate couple. She's grooming him here. And this scene is one of the only times we've seen the entire family together. We see Boris leading the way, and Itchy right behind. And then from the side, Fat Belly. And then Natasha, who's pregnant. And then the last is White Tip. And after a couple of months, we saw puppies. This is the end of May. And in this video, we see moms giving them a baby cottontail to begin eating solid foods. And here we see Natasha taking a break with her pups. I love the footage that we get on this mound. It's really special. And here we have a sub-adult from the previous litter babysitting the pups. This is something rare we've never gotten on camera before. This is also something really special that we don't often capture on camera. Notice the body language. They're happy to see each other, they're wagging their tails. The one on the left is submissive. This is one of the pups you saw earlier on that same mound. She grew up to be so beautiful. It's one of the few times it snows here in North Texas. And here we see Natasha digging her den. And she's lost her beautiful coat. She has signs of mange. Look at her tail. And here she is just 4 years after we first saw her with Boris, and she's pregnant again. So eventually we saw less and less of Natasha as her mange got worse, and we started seeing other unknown coyotes come into the Connemara. This is Boris calling out to Natasha, but this time he didn't get an answer. So Boris is here on the left, and he's walking with the new breeding pair, which includes his son. So at about 9 years old, Boris is now an elder in the pack, and he's able to teach the family survival skills. He's experienced habitat loss and fragmentation, construction, development, and he's still alive. So it's important for him to be able to pass his skills on to other generations. Here's the new breeding pair on the mound where we first saw Natasha and her pups. And the female was pregnant here and gave birth the following month. And here's the new nursing mom. So the story continues at the Connemara. This is from last pup season in 2025. And we'll continue to document these families as long as we can. And we haven't seen Boris since last spring. So he's either passed on or he's still out there being elusive. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce Mark Surls.
All right. Well, thank you, Karin. I could certainly watch and listen to those videos all day, but instead I'll provide a bit of background on my journey and share how I ended up here today, sharing my love for coyotes and dedication to advocate for them and other wild carnivores found throughout the US. I hope to both inspire and provide some insights about our coyote neighbors for the viewers today. So a bit of background on me. My father left me no choice, that's him on the left, but to have photography be an integral part of my life. We spent many days hiking to a beautiful waterfall in North Georgia, or trips to photograph a sweeping landscape when I was a child. He was not only a superb black and white photographer, but also owned a Leica camera business and was invited to Wetzlar, Germany to participate in their immersive Leica school. I spent many days of my youth helping him at camera shows across the Southeast when I wasn't schlepping a heavy bag full of every lens I owned through the woods. And right here too, that's my first camera, that Minolta there. Still have it today. So naturally, I spent many years following in my father's footsteps and shooting landscapes. I loved it, and I still do. One of my favorite ways to shoot landscapes is finding beauty when conditions turned for the worse, or when they turned back to peace and calm. Photographing landscapes when conditions were changing is not unsimilar to photographing wildlife. Waiting and anticipating what's going to happen next is a skill that requires the photographer to be connected with his or her subject. And I was fortunate to spend 3 years living in Zambia, located in the heart of Africa. During my last year, I managed a game reserve. Though my camera wasn't the best, I started on a path moving toward wildlife photography. It was a truly magical time where I could never figure out if I was working or simply being a tourist in my own backyard. I felt as if my life was being lived from within the confines of a National Geographic magazine. From Cape Buffalo chasing me on my motorcycle to wrangling a young hippo who burst through a closed door on a semi-truck, desperately trying to find his mom who had already exited the truck out of the back through the open door after they were transported from Kafue National Park in order to reintroduce the iconic but locally missing species. Every day there was an adventure. It also sparked a passion in me for those often overlooked species like civets or pangolins and jackals. Looking back at my love for those smaller animals makes me realize that I was destined to advocate on behalf of similar and often overlooked species in America. When I returned to the US from Zambia, I landed in Colorado, and a new world of wildlife was presented to me, from burrowing owls to eagles, prairie dogs to elk. I couldn't get enough of the wildlife that Colorado had to offer. While I always loved photographing those species and many others, it was always the highlight of an outing when I was able to see a coyote. I wanted to photograph more of them, though, and I didn't want it to be just a chance occurrence. I wanted to go out specifically to find and photograph coyotes. Just like proficiency in any other subject, to make that shift happen, it meant that I had to do my homework and learn more about the life of coyote. I was drawn to coyotes because they felt familiar and they were accessible. For those who love dogs, it isn't hard to find that same connection with a coyote, but in a wilder and more ancient way. A feeling that we've known each other for a very long time. Our current bodies may be different, but we're never strangers. I believe that wild kinship is also the reason why so many people from around the world are drawn to wolves. This isn't just about wildlife that we may find cute or beautiful. It's about sharing the landscape for many generations and acknowledging how so many of the characteristics that we have as humans can be found in our wild canid neighbors. When I dedicated myself to the creation of my book, Coyote Conversations, I had to make a shift from hoping to see the coyote to learning how to find them. That shift began my informal education in the biology, ecology, and ethology of coyotes, an education that will continue for the rest of my days, learning from experts and from every new life experience I have with them. So when people mention wildlife photography, images of far-flung and remote locations often come to mind, while bucket list locations like Yellowstone can yield incredible shots like this showdown between a curious coyote and an otter that isn't having any of it. Coyotes' incredible adaptability provides both chances to thrive in a variety of ecosystems and endless unique opportunities for a dedicated wildlife photographer. There's an old saying that the best camera is the one that you have with you. I'd like to expand that line of thought to include the best location to photograph coyotes is the one that you can get to often. And for me, that's two spots in the Denver metro area. One is right down the street from my house, which is Crown Hill Park, run by Jeffco Open Space, and the Rocky Mountain Arsenal Wildlife Refuge. By visiting these two locations on a consistent basis, I'm not only able to capture the images that I wanted, but I started to learn about the individuals who lived there, their unique personalities, their routines, when and where they're likely to hunt or rendezvous with their families. I can often recognize individuals now, not just by their physical characteristics, but how they carry themselves and how they act around people. So we're going to shift a little bit back to elk for a second and think about why so many visitors come to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado every year or every September to view the elk that call it home. It's exciting, right? They bugle, they spar with mud, bushes, trees, and each other. I mean, they turn from an animal that is usually found grazing or resting all of the time to nature's version of the craziest reality dating show that ever existed. But this is the great thing about coyotes. It's not a month of intense drama within an otherwise benign year. They're always up to something interesting. Watching the intense focus of a coyote scoping out his or her next meal and then leap in the air and catch the rodent snack always brings a smile to my face. Then a familiar scene takes place to anyone who gives their dog an especially tasty treat. While our dogs do this out of a heightened level of excitement, coyotes do it to reduce chances of getting bitten while trying to incapacitate their next meal. When they're young, though, sometimes it's a little bit less about function and a little bit more about play. Starting in December, the mating season quickly approaches, and coyotes start to display more affection toward their mate. Maybe it's a newly developed relationship or one like in the picture on the left, one that has been maintained for many years. Even outside of mating season, though, coyotes can often be found touching, rubbing, or kissing on each other like the ones on the right. And there's always a chance to hear America's song dogs singing to their family or other nearby coyotes. Coyotes vocalize for many different reasons. Sometimes it's to find a potential mate, get the family back together, or in the case on the one on the left, letting everyone know their intense displeasure and fear about a mountain lion that has taken up refuge in a nearby tree. And we've all been here before, whether you were the child that was subject of your parents' frustration or the parent trying to find the best words to communicate disappointment. This is not a foreign concept. The difference being that the dad here can't say, "Son, I disapprove of your actions." So he does it with body language and a flash of his teeth. And for folks wondering why dad was so upset, well, let's just say that trying to mate with your mother is taboo across many cultures. Another aspect of learning about the lives of coyotes is the many interspecies interactions they have. Vocal and numerous magpies, ravens, or crows can mean there's food around, and it can alert someone to the presence or soon to be presence of a coyote. So next time you find these brilliant corvids making a racket, hang out for a minute, and you may see a coyote who heard that same commotion trot up. But it's not always a friendly relationship. Sometimes a reminder of nature's pecking order needs to happen. And when there are bison around, coyote are often nearby. when they aren't admiring the beauty of wildflowers together, or at least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Coyotes take advantage of a herd stirring up insects and rodents as they graze. I've also observed them wandering through a herd of bison, which has started calving. On rare occasions, a coyote may try to take a newborn bison calf, or red dogs as they're known because of their reddish fur. They're most often looking for afterbirth, which provides an easy and nutritious meal. Even so, the bison moms always keep a watchful eye, and sometimes the bison just don't want the coyotes around, like on the left. Ranchers who allow coyotes to live on their rangeland also have seen coyotes among their herds looking for afterbirth without going after their calves. I've only been able to capture my all-time favorite relationship in nature poorly and a handful of times. Wherever coyote and badger territory overlap, people have observed these two carnivores working together to hunt prairie dogs or ground squirrels. It is an absolute pleasure to see this unlikely duo side by side with a clear understanding of the hunting arrangement. Many people spend their entire lives as photographers of nature, going out and experiencing the excitement of not knowing what they'll see that day. It's a wonderful and completely valid way to enjoy wildlife photography. But when you dedicate yourself to a species, you're forced to learn about them, both through observation and research. That knowledge tends to go beyond the biological world and enter into the relationship that species has with humans. A few years ago, a friend of mine and 2022 Sony World Photographer of the Year, Scott Wilson, told me that I needed to use my photos, my experiences, and my knowledge about coyotes to start advocating for them, much like he has done with wild horses. So that's what I did. I used that base knowledge and love for coyotes that I gained from countless hours photographing them to start my advocacy. I used the photos to share the sometimes entertaining and sometimes heartbreaking stories with the public, sharing through firsthand experience and reliving so many moments of joy and sadness, translating art into advocacy with communities, the legislature, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And on that note, I'm delighted to share that a bill to restrict the use of second-generation anticoagulants just this morning received a 22-12 favorable vote in the Colorado Senate and will move to the House next week. This has been a subject I've worked tirelessly on the past few months and have been pushing to have legislation heard for the past 3 years. Once it passes through the House and signed by the governor, it will remove consumer access to these highly toxic poisons and reduce exposures to coyotes and other wild carnivores who suffer from their harmful effects through secondary exposure. We've also seen great progress through Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Last year, I served on the Fur Bear Working Group alongside other advocates, ranchers, hunters, and trappers to provide recommendation to agency staff to update policies for the 17 species grouped together for no other reason than people like to kill them for their fur. That work will be the subject of the next Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting, where we will continue to fight for regulatory changes to align these species with others who aren't allowed to be hunted or trapped in unlimited numbers or be killed when they're trying to raise their dependent young. Thank you so much for joining us today and affording me the opportunity to share a bit about my journey and some of my photos I've captured throughout many years of living alongside Coyote.
Thank you so much, Karin and Mark. And I wanted to also give a shout out to the person behind that Project Coyote screen, Anne Paquette, who is diligently making this whole Zoom event go and is the one who is telling you to put your questions in the Q&A box. I see we've got a bunch of questions already. I'm going to go ahead and share, well, I was going to share my slides, just let me get those back up. I don't know where they went. Here we go. Can everybody see that? Um, so here we go. Let's get back to the slides. And I also just wanted to give a shout out here to our capture coexistence program here at Project Coyote. I like to think there are a lot of photographers and videographers and others who might be on this webinar. And please check out Capture Coexistence, Photographers for Wildlife. We do a lot of work to unite nature photographers and videographers to end horrible practices like killing contests and promote ethical photography and do work like Mark and Karin do of leveraging their images in the service of greater protections for coyotes and other carnivores and wildlife generally. So there's a QR code if you'd like to check it out. It's also on our website, projectcoyote.org, and then just look for a Capture Coexistence program. And I also wanted to say that if you'd also like to get involved, we have a monthly giving program called the Coyote Collective, and that's a great way to stay in touch with us and all of the work we do and to get information about our programs and including the work of people like Mark and Karen. And again, that is our happy slide for this year's Coyote Awareness Week and the QR code to take the Coyote Pledge, express your commitment, get our toolkit, and other information. And with that, I'm going to leave that up and we're going to go to the Q&A. Got a lot of questions here. So let's check them out. I have a bunch of questions here about mange and how to treat it and how you guys deal with that when you're in the field and you see it. So I don't know, Karin or Mark, Karin, you want to take that one since you were showed happy pictures of recovered animals.
Yeah, a lot of times when people see coyotes with mange, suffering with mange, their first instinct is, oh, we need to trap them. We need to dart them and trap them and get them to a rehabber. But as you can see from both of our presentations, coyotes have families just like us. And the stress well, first of all, it's very difficult to trap a coyote, especially when they're mobile. So the stress of trapping them, getting them, kidnapping them away from their families, it's just not ideal. So I would recommend reaching out to Animal Help Now. They have an awesome app. You can type in your zip code, your location, if there's a coyote with mange, and find a rehabber near you. I believe some states it's illegal to treat them, but definitely if you see an animal suffering, reach out to a permanent wildlife rehabber through that app, and it's amazing.
Great. And there's also a specific question for you, Karin. Can you share a little bit more about what trail cams you used? And maybe, Mark, you could pile on to that, what kind of cameras you use and how you do your work. I think there's some interest in hearing how you do your work and get out there in the field.
Yeah, so the trail cameras have been quite an adventure for us, an expensive adventure actually. Um, the I don't necessarily have a brand that's better than others, but I will say they must have, for coyote work, they must have a no glow feature, because the light that any light, they're very, very sensitive to change in their environment. So we found that trail cameras with a no glow feature is less disturbing to the animals and to the coyotes. Bobcats, they don't care. Bobcats just walk right past it. Even if it's flashing and making noise, bobcats are a little bit different, but our canid species, excuse me, our canid species are very skittish and very sensitive to trail cameras. So I would recommend one with a no glow feature. I don't know if you have any opinions, Mark.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I do a bit of trail cam work myself. I partnered with Jeffco Open Space with my local coyotes a few years ago to monitor their breeding habits. You know, another piling on the expensive part. I mean, sometimes you can get a trail cam for 70 to $100, so not it's a very low entry there. But you can go and add on like the cellular function where you can get updates to your phone every day to see what's been happening in front of your cameras. I do try to do that when I have them out, but you have to do a monthly subscription there. And then as far as when I'm out in the field, Karin and I both use I use a 2 to 600 millimeter lens, oftentimes with a 1.4 teleconverter, meaning it goes from 600 to 840 millimeters. Karin uses a 600 quite a bit as well. That allows us to get these really great images that look like we're standing right next to them, but we're actually at quite a distance. And many times too, my images have been cropped in even with such a big lens to fill the frame with a coyote. So it's one of those things where if you're serious about photography of wildlife, having the ability to photograph them from a distance without interrupting their behavior or causing any kind of habituation is super important.
Yeah, and I will say is whether you're photographing in Yellowstone or in a suburban area, um, keeping a distance from these animals is very important. It's if they're habituated to people, that could be a death sentence for them. So that's why we use our car as a blind. I even changed systems to a mirrorless system and that has a silent shutter because of coyotes. Because I just that sound was just too disturbing, and I wanted to be able to photograph them and capture natural behavior without them even knowing that I'm there. So that's really important. The other thing about one more thing about trail cameras, we're in the process of switching over to cellular cameras where it's kind of an expensive process, but we're trying to add solar panels to each of our cameras so that they can last longer. So we don't have to go out and change the batteries as often. So we typically change the batteries maybe once every quarter or so, but I'd love to just set it and forget it and just set it in a place like that mound. We get some great footage there. There's not a lot of activity, but when there is, it's incredible. So with a solar panel and a pretty large SD card, we could probably set it for maybe 6 months, maybe a year because it doesn't get that much activity.
Great. And that took care of one of the key questions here about the ethical aspects of wildlife photography. So I think you guys covered it to do it in the least disruptive, furthest away place, which obviously takes a lot of time and patience, and sometimes, like particularly with Karen's work, not even being there. And then you can still get these images that go a long way to promoting understanding and tolerance. And speaking of tolerance, you talked a lot, Karen, about and showed those pictures of what happened in the Connemara and the development there, which I know is happening all over your neck of the woods in Texas, which is one of the fastest growing states. And we have a question here about Florida as well, which is another extremely fast growing state. And it just brings into here how do we deal with the fact that developers come in, abut what was wild habitat, and then everyone gets up in an uproar when coyotes end up in their neighborhoods, and it's a push and pull of who's in whose neighborhood. So since you both do so much phenomenal work on teaching coexistence and using your imagery to teach coexistence, if you could each say a few words about, how you would approach how we should talk about that issue.
Karin, you can go first.
Yeah, I would just say a proactive approach is the way to go. We've got to be proactive instead of reactive. We don't want and what's been happening here in Texas and what's inspired me to start giving him presentations. We had an incident that involved a child with a coyote, and the city of Dallas reacted to that. Now they have a plan in place, but before they didn't. So that's part of the work that I'm doing with Project Coyote is working with cities, municipalities, so that we have a plan in place. And there is education. We're educating these new community members that are moving in, building houses and moving into these spaces that were once wild. They may not even be from this country necessarily, so they're not familiar with the native wildlife. So being proactive versus reactive is really important. And we love working with cities to be able to help support that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to the photography part is, to oftentimes to get education out to the public, you have to get some buy-in from them. And so that could, the way I do that often is through my images, right? So get them to see the beauty, to start to appreciate the animal itself. And then once we've established that, then we can provide the education. If people don't care about a specific species or any subject, uh, there isn't a lot of desire to want to learn more about how to coexist with coyotes. And so, winning with the heart first is often my approach, and then once you get someone's heart, then you can share the knowledge to uh, lead to peaceful coexistence with them.
Great, thanks for that. And that actually goes into a couple of questions we have about doing presentations and bringing this information to more communities. And I'll just underscore what Karin and Mark said. They're doing awesome work in Texas and Colorado, and we're leveraging their knowledge and information in other places as well. Project Coyote has a very active program called Coyote Friendly Communities. We've got lots of resources on our website, including a toolkit and videos and handouts that you can give out to your community members. And the toolkit will teach you how to talk to your local officials about coyotes and how to develop some of these practices in your communities to be more tolerant and to not be freaked out when you see coyotes just hanging out. I think Mark and Karin have showed here today what some of their so-called normal behavior is, and that just because you see a coyote, you don't have to worry that it's going to cause you harm. And it's really about developing acceptance and tolerance and even wonder and awe about having wild neighbors in your midst. So we've got lots of resources on our website, and we'd be happy to answer inquiries at info@projectcoyote.org. We have a couple questions about doing more of these presentations. We are eager to do that. Mark and Karin do as much as they humanly can. And we also have a whole webinar series coming up for the rest of the year that we'll be sharing information about. And again, our Coyote Friendly Communities program, we can offer assistance with doing work in your own community and potentially doing some in-person and online presentations for specific communities. So certainly get in touch with us, and I'll loop back to a couple of people who asked that question here about that. So enough plug about our work. Back to all your questions. We have one for Karin. Oh no, here we have. Wait, we answered that already. Sorry. Could the second presenter summarize what he loves most about coyotes and why that species stands out over the very many that he has photographed? And that
Yeah,
would
I
be you,
love that
Mark.
question. And I mean, it's a couple of things, right? So once y- you learn where they are, when to go out to find them, uh, they start appearing everywhere, right? It's like you don't think of the color yellow, and then the first thing that comes to your mind is the color yellow, right? And so, where at one point it was, like I said in the presentation, really hard for me to find them. Now, like I see them all the time, and so that's one piece of it, right? It's like I love wolves, I love mountain lions, but the fact is they're really difficult species to find, and so that accessibility piece is one of the things that I love so much about them. That, if you are interested in seeing a wild carnivore, most likely you have one really close by. If you live in 49 of 50 states in America. uh, the other piece is because they are just so brilliant. They can be, uh, sometimes hyper aware of their surroundings, where they're gone as soon as they see you. uh, but then other times they're so focused on what they're doing that everything else around them disappears, and watching that concentration brings me so much joy. The unexpected behaviors that we'll see, whether it's like a sibling or a mate, coming in and giving them a wrestle or a kiss or chasing each other around. Like there's there's just such a wide range of behaviors that they do on a consistent basis, that yes, I know where to find coyotes now. Really, I can leave here and probably go find some coyotes pretty quickly, but I don't know what I'm going to see. And like that, so that unexpected behavior is something that truly makes every time I'm sharing space with them an exciting opportunity that I have no idea, what I'll see when I get there.
Awesome. Thank you. And over to you, Karen. In your presentation, somebody wants to know what was going on with a submissive coyote when it was mobbed by the other two. Was it a reunion that started the vocalizations? And piling on to that, if you could say a few words about escorting behavior. Somebody has a question about that and while they're walking with their small dog and what they should be aware of.
Yeah, so the submissive coyote was just part of their personality traits. Um, there's a great study um, out of, I believe it's Utah. Julie Young, she's determined that coyotes have different personalities, just like humans. So there's the submissive ones. There are the ones that are a little bit more confident. For example, those are the ones that are gonna go up to your front porch. And those are the ones that are gonna go up to a bird feeder. They're just, and then I believe the other one is maybe inquisitive. Um, but somewhere in the middle, we always wonder which are the ones that survive. Is it the ones that are extremely submissive because they're shy and they avoid people, they avoid humans, or is it the ones that are a little bit more confident? But after talking with Julie, it's the ones that are somewhere in the middle, that have a good balance. Because the ones that are very submissive, like some of the ones that we've seen in pack structure, they are if a dog that's larger than them, these coyotes are maybe about between 25 and 35 pounds or so here in this part of Texas. So if a large Rhodesian Ridgeback comes after a very submissive coyote, that coyote would potentially lose its life. And actually, that's a part of the story that I left out. That coyote that was in the snow, one of the pups that was on the mound, after about a year and a half, she was attacked by a roadrunner ridgeback that was off leash in the meadow. And a class of fifth graders were on a nature walk and they discovered her, unfortunately. So it was a bittersweet learning experience for them. They got to see this beautiful coyote, but they learned about dogs off leash and they learned about, they learned to how big the coyote was and how beautiful it was. So, um, I hope that answers the question about the submissiveness and the personality types. The other question about escorting behavior, what was the specific question?
Um, Somebody want to know what's the best response when they're, walking down the street with their dog and their coyotes around, and should they be
Yeah.
screaming or using pepper spray or anything like that?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. If it's in a neighborhood, if it's in your backyard, front yard, your property where humans are, a park, a playground, absolutely. That coyote should not be there. They need to learn to feel uncomfortable in those places while humans are there. So humane hazing is appropriate. Um, if you're walking your dog in a nature trail, in nature, that's the coyote's territory. So we need to be very cautious. If a coyote's escorting you, just turn around slowly and go the other way and avoid that area for a while because they're protecting something. So they're either protecting a den or some other resource. So really it depends on the environment and where the coyote is.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming to the end of the time and there's a lot of questions here. I just want to acknowledge that there are a couple of questions here in the chat that really get to how can we reduce the prejudice against coyotes and how can we reduce practices like the theft of coyote pups from dens and to do hunting calls and 24/7 trapping and hunting rules. And I will just say those are really complex issues, they're really difficult issues, and they are all the kinds of topics that Project Coyote and many, many other advocacy organizations are working on. As Mark mentioned, part of the translation here from all of this beautiful photography and trail cam images is part of the purpose of it is to promote understanding and dispel the myths and the fears that people have about coyotes. And that goes a long way then to advocating on their behalf because they are really important members of our communities. They're important ecological actors. They help reduce rodent populations and promote biodiversity, and they're truly amazing animals. So anything you can do to get involved in efforts to change hunting and trapping laws and to reduce the pressures on coyotes and the myths and misunderstandings that have persisted for years. And hopefully some of these images and some of the things that you've learned today will motivate you to get more involved. And please do join us with Project Coyote if you aren't already signed up to get our action alerts and all of our beautiful imagery. And just thank you so much for being here. It's been a great turnout. And I think there's just a lot of interest in these beautiful creatures. And I hope what you saw today piques your interest in getting involved even more on their behalf and in behalf of wild nature wherever you find it in your communities. So thank you all so much again, and here's to a great rest of Coyote Awareness Week. And we look forward to seeing you in future webinars and out in the advocacy space as well. And many thanks to Anne for running this and to Karin and Mark for their tremendous work and sharing their experiences with us today. Right? Have a great day, everybody.